First of all, thank you very much for joining us. We got David Malukas. Um, really honored to meet you. You had such a stellar Indy Lights career. Um, Obviously, that helped translate to the big show. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, we know a little bit about what it takes. You win win prize money for winning the championship, which helps cover some of the costs to move to the big time. But you still have to come up with a ton of sponsorship after that. Obviously, very challenging. Um, can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you for having me a part of this. But yeah,
But you have
it's
cookies, so we're gonna
yeah,
be here.
exactly. No, it's been a journey, coming from Indie Next and coming up to this point. It's one of the main things I feel like people don't talk about in racing is trying to get sponsorship and money. I mean, you can be the best driver in the world, you can be the worst, but it's all about money at the end of the day, and that's kind of one of the techniques that I feel like a driver needs to do is talking with sponsorship, getting the money from somewhere. And going throughout my racing career, especially in go karting, I've known a lot of good drivers, very, very talented, that probably are nowhere near racing at this moment because they didn't have money or the funding and they couldn't find it. Thankfully, my early years, I had a lot of help from my parents. When I'm 13 picking my nose, I don't know much about money and talking and trying to find sponsorship, but so they managed to help me through those years, and I went to Europe by myself, and that's kind of where I learned discipline and trying to learn how to live, make food, and just to be alive. Because at that point, I was very much I would leave my helmet, I would leave my things, and get my parents to help me. So going up through the years, I mean, honestly, I've kind of learned them. I've shadowed them. Thankfully, they have a very successful trucking company, H&B Trucking, and they've came from the Soviet Union to America with absolutely nothing, and they managed to build a whole business from it. So they were very, very talented on getting money and talking with people and talking to the right people, and I've managed to feed off of that, growing up and watching them.
Awesome. The money part is obviously for people who don't follow racing, especially North American racing. People don't understand that in general, it's the driver that pays the team. It's not, unless you're at one of the big three of Penske, Ganassi, or Andretti, the driver generally arranges all the sponsorship and brings that to the team, not the other way around. Where if you're a hockey player, a football player, a baseball player, and you've got talent, you get scouted, you get a big contract because they want your services. I always try and there's always one thought I have that sounds kind of mean, but in a political light, how much better do you think racing could be if it was just talent that was here?
It would, well, yes. I mean,
Because everyone here, let's not make a mistake,
all in
everyone
all,
here is
all in
talent.
all, yes. To get to this level, you still need to have a lot of talent. I mean, it is the field right now is very, very strong, and I think just even talking to veterans of Will Power and Scott Dixon, they said this is the strongest field that they've seen in their lifetime of racing IndyCar. So definitely no takeaway from that. The field is still extremely, extremely strong, but I think a lot of talent early on. I'd say probably from the jump from go karting to open wheel racing is where that kind of needs help on getting a lot of drivers to move to the next level and make it there. But at the end of the day, it's a tough ask. Racing is very expensive, and the money needs to come from somewhere. That is being the team finds a sponsorship, the driver brings a sponsorship. All in all, you need money, and money is kind of what makes things go around. And you could be very, very talented, but if the team doesn't have a sponsor for you and you don't have a sponsor, then you're kind of out of luck. So it's very tough. And yes, it would be better if, let's say, racing was all just about talent. But how do you get that? I don't know. Does racing need to get into the eyes of how, I mean, like international football, as in soccer, kind of has it where all these Saudi Arabian companies kind of come in and they start buying out these big teams and now bringing in money, and it kind of changes the way the sport is. I mean,
Yeah.
do we need some Saudi Arabians to come in and bring a big sponsor in for the series, and then everybody is sweet sailing? That would be obviously fantastic. But at the end of the day, it's kind of what you need to do as a driver.
Taking a look just at this morning's practice, top nine drivers separated by just over 3/10 of a second, the top 25 separated by 1 second. You mentioned obviously that it's a site like Scotty D and Will Power talking about how competitive it is right now, but obviously There's high budget teams, there's low budget teams,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, everyone's still competitive. We don't know who's going to win any given weekend. We don't know what the end result's going to be, and it literally can be anyone's weekend. And yet, IndyCar is a distant second, third, whatever you want to call it, to F1 right now. Where F1 isn't like the racing isn't great. It's very predictable. It's super boring.
Yeah.
What is it going to take to get more eyes, or what do you think it's going to take to get more eyes on the IndyCar series as competitive, like where you can actually see passing? You don't know who's going to win week to week. How do we close that gap?
I don't know. We've had obviously a lot of changes in IndyCar from ownership, and in recent years, especially this year, there seems to start being a different trend, a lot of changes from the marketing side, and it definitely seems like they're trying from their end. And we're doing a lot of meetings pre-season, after season, about what we can do better. And from F1, they kind of lucked out. They made the obviously the show Drive to Survive, and probably the most beautiful timing they could have done when COVID happened. Everybody's at home, and it hit the top charts on Netflix, and it brought a lot of the U.S. Customers in. So it's tough, but I do think IndyCar, what we have, is extremely special. And anytime somebody gets into it and sees it for a little bit, they already become hooked, right away. And although you could look at it as F1, they're number one, it's everybody's talking about it, but them having interest is bringing a lot of people that didn't even look at motorsport into it. Right. And now with F1, they realize, hey, this was cool. We had this cool battle between Hamilton and Verstappen, but now in these recent years, it's just Red Bull's running away with it. And then they look at the history of F1 and they see, oh, it's always been like that, just different teams. So now these people are trying to find interest in different sports in motorsport, and a lot of them are starting to come to IndyCar and reaching on IndyCar and seeing how interesting it is. Because yes, although Alex Flo has kind of been breaking that rule these past few races and he's been on a streak, it will come to an end at some point because it is very tough and it's very talented for me to do that. But yeah, IndyCar is very special on the fact that although a lot of different budgets, a lot of different teams, it's still spec racing and it allows for talent to really be shown here and everybody being so close as it is.
How tough is it getting around this track here in Toronto? Obviously, street circuit. Just I know that if you can see something on TV, whether it's a bump, a bit of oversteer, a bit of understeer, if you can see it, it's 5 times worse than what it actually it's 5 times worse in the car than what you actually see, because if you can see it, it's very, very bad. Obviously, Toronto, very bumpy. Is this first of all, how tough is it to get around here?
It's very tough, and I feel like this year's actually been the hardest. There's a lot of changes with the track. They've repaved this whole last section going through 10 and 11, and it hasn't really made things better, I'd say. It's just changed things around. Yes, there's overall more grip, but the bumps are still very much there and actually amplified. And it makes the track very interesting. A lot of different characteristics. You go into different corners, and the car feels completely different. I think out of the season as a whole, this is definitely in the top two for most difficult tracks. It's very technical. Every corner, like I said, you have to change everything. You go into turn 3, you brake, a lot of grip. You go into mid corner, and it's like ice. Same thing in 5. You come in, a lot of grip, mid corner, ice. I mean, Rosenquist ended up hitting the wall in practice today because of that ice moment in 5. But then you go into different corners like turn 6, and it's high rubber all the way through, and then at the exit it starts to go. So, and of course, adding on to it, put bumps in there. So it makes it very, very tough, especially when it comes to qualifying, putting a lap together, all into that one last moment, because that's what you need to do. When the tires are there, you have one lap to get it done. In this track, it makes it very tough for you.
What do you think of Canada? This is your first trip, or is this trip 2?
No, this for IndyCar. For IndyCar, this is my second. I've been here obviously through the feeder series many times.
Okay.
Canada as a whole, I love it. Like this city, out of all of the places we've gone in the calendar, it's actually one of the places that I've thoroughly enjoyed just walking around and exploring the city. The food is also incredible. I haven't had a bad food spot. I don't know if that's just luck or if it's honestly the food is just incredible. Every time I've gone, it's been amazing. And the stomach is happy afterwards too, so there's no issues with that. So like overall, it's amazing, and the city, the people are so friendly. It's always those moments where it's like, no, after you, no, after you, after you, after you.
Well, we're Canadians, we're fairly polite.
So, out of everything I've been to, this is one of the places where I honestly would probably see myself living here because it is very nice. So
that takes away from some of the toughness of the track.
Sure, I mean, you have a bad day at the track, at least you have an amazing city to explore afterwards.
Now, one question I like to ask, and this is kind of how I wrap everything up. And again, thank you very, very much for giving us the time. What is one misconception that people have of you or of racers that you want to clear up?
A misconception. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really feel like there is any that I can think of coming from the public eye. I tend to be very public on expressing my emotion. I don't really hide anything, and I am who I am when it comes to social media. And I feel like people know that, and people see that, and there hasn't really been any moments where I'm like, oh, that's not true, or that's not how I see myself. So I've been pretty clean from my end. I don't have any moments. That's kind of yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.